New albums from the beautiful South and Stereophonics, plus JK from Jamiroquai, all sounding fab with Jules Holland in half an hour. Watching first on BBC2 with a stern warning about your TV.
Every one of you watching this screen, look out, because soon, very soon, the most horrifying monster menace ever conceived will be oozing into this theater.
You'll know the story I'm about to tell from any number of Hollywood B-movies. A small town, safe, ordinary, perhaps even a little bit complacent in its prosperity, finds itself menaced by an alien peril.
It's indestructible. It's indescribable. Nothing can stop it.
This time, though, the small town was Hollywood itself, and the monster was something that's worked its way into your home, too.
Two teenagers see it first.
I thought it was black magic of some kind. I didn't believe when they plugged it in that there was really going to be a picture on it.
It came to the house within a few months of my birth, and being an only child, I just sat watching it. You know, that's what I did.
Baby of the family.
It may just have been a baby, but it was growing fast. In 1946, just 6,000 American homes had television. 4 years later, 6 million had succumbed, and cinema was beginning to feel real terror.
On big rubber-covered wheels.
Just as Hollywood had killed vaudeville, it seemed altogether possible that television might kill the movies.
Hollywood was terrified by the advent of television. Suddenly we thought that the sort of hypnotic quality of a moving image reproduced of life that film was going to be available free to everybody, and why would they ever go out again?
Here came television, and all of a sudden the audiences who were going to the movies stopped going, and they started staying home and watching I Love Lucy and Uncle Milty. Well, that was a big threat, and for years, television was seen as kind of an evil thing, but also a second-rate thing.
There was a terrible moment, you know, where Jack Warner actually barred any reference to television as a medium in any movie that Warner Brothers produced, which was ludicrous.
Like any B-movie starlet, the studios had reacted at first with a shrieking hysteria, frantically searching for the secret weapon that might kill off their new rival. Television threatened to keep customers in their homes, and cinema was willing to try almost anything to lure them out again.
The studios began to experiment with the different formats.
I'm sure you'd all like to know something about the new entertainment miracle, Third Dimension.
I was interested in 3D because with one eye, I thought that's going to be the most difficult thing to do. And because of the panic, Jack Warner let a one-eyed director do it.
Such gimmicks were never likely to win the battle against television. But Hollywood could take its revenge by mounting a propaganda campaign against its new rival. In its first appearances on the cinema screen, a television is never just a domestic appliance. It's also a possession that might have the power to possess you.
Carrie, you can't sit around here with nothing to do. You should at least get a television set. Oh, no. Why? Because it's supposed to be the last refuge for lonely women? But that's very sweet of you.
In Douglas Sirk's 1955 romantic melodrama, All That Heaven Allows, Jane Wyman plays a middle-class widow who falls in love with Rock Hudson, a gardener and a tree surgeon. Horrified by what they see as the unsuitability of this relationship, her children turn to television as the perfect tranquilizer.
Mother, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, Mrs. Scott, and Happy New Year. Kay and I couldn't afford anything but a table model, but it's got a nice-sized screen, and it's easy to operate. All you have to do is turn that dial, and you have all the company you want, right there on the screen. Drama, comedy, life's parade at your fingertips.
The way that Sirk captures Wyman in that television frame alone and jaundiced by its yellow tint, lets us see all too clearly that this small box is a trap. Hollywood feared this fate for itself, a shrunken life drained of colour and spectacle. And the shudder of revulsion it felt for television's terrible attractions lasted long after the danger had passed.
Come to me.
Come to me now. Come to Nicky. Don't keep me waiting.
In Videodrome, David Cronenberg attacked television's insidious ability to get inside the home and inside the head. But this charge wasn't exactly new. It was television's domesticity that made it so dangerous. A siren in the corner of the living room that drew people's attention away from each other towards that seductive glow.
So what is this? Television.
In Barry Levinson's film Avalon, the arrival of the first television turns a family into a gawping audience, one quite indiscriminate about what it's watching. And the television soon corrupts other sacraments too. The family meal is abandoned for the TV dinner.
It's a pretty strong instance, nicely done, of the way the communion of the family around a dinner table with a little argument and joshing and disagreement and affection, all of it that goes on around a family dinner table, is interrupted by the arrival, the time of the arrival, of the Burl show, and they all rush in, and they become a quite different community. They become part of the American public family, joined up to Milton Berle. And it's a very subtle and good instance of a radical change that happened then in American life.
It's definitely replaced the family interaction, I think, because you see people that come home and what do? They watch TV. And when you really look at it from the outside, when you watch people watching TV, or if you put a camera on somebody watching TV, it's really like they're in a daze. It's like they're hypnotized.
Acting, screaming and stuff when they're having sex.
How do you know this?
Jed's got cable.
Oh, he ever does.
Okay, baby, mommy's gotta go out now.
When will I get a brother? You said I was gonna get a brother to play with.
Yeah, well, that's why mommy's going to happy hour. Now, listen, you just sit there with Mr. Babysitter, and he'll take real good care of you, okay? Sweetie, don't sit so close to that thing. It's gonna rot your brain.
I live in New York City, and looking out the window at the other apartment buildings at night and seeing like the dots of light in the apartments and everybody watching the same show on television. It's just kind of off-putting because you realize that there are millions and millions of people across the country who are just sitting there watching television, doing nothing with their lives.
Somebody has to kill the babysitter.
Television is a kind of narcotic, and if the addicts are to get free, cold turkey may be their only chance. In Ben Stiller's The Cable Guy, Jim Carrey's character finally decides to throw himself to his death in the local relay station, blacking out transmissions for miles around.
This is the moment of truth, Mr. Sweet. Samuel Jacob Sweet has been found.
The Cable Guy concludes that the only good television is a dead one.
Help. Help.
Of course, the very last thing Hollywood wants people to do is stop watching. It wants people to get in their cars and go to the movies. And naturally, cinema is always at pains to reassure the audience that watching a big screen is quite different to watching a small one. They would, wouldn't they? But there may even be an element of truth to the claim.
Seeing a movie on the big screen has a mythological aspect because of the size. It has a religious aspect because of the size and the inexorability of it. But that's all gone the minute you're on television. If it's on tape, even more so, because you can stop it whatever you want. It was unimaginable to stop a movie any more than you could stop a train. You know, easier to stop a train than a movie, and that was part of its magic.
Abracadabra.
Where television's blue light always makes an audience uglier, the flickering beam that emerges from a movie projector is almost always flattering.
Affacciati alla finestra e guarda, ragazzo.
Alfredo è bellissimo!
This is a light that can perform alchemy, turning base metal to gold. And in Cinema Paradiso, it turns an unhappy mob into a charmed congregation.
We think of film as the almost primitive yearning to be told stories, the way people would gather around in a cave and somebody would act out a story or tell a story. And it was a collective experience in a way.
Prenda qualche cosa, presto. Su, prenda qualche cosa.
L'avvocato mi ha detto. Ora so.
L'avvocato mi ha detto. Ora so.
E debbono saperlo tutti. Sì. Tutto lo debbono sapere.
Tutti dovranno sapere.
This isn't the stupor of the television audience anymore, but something quite different. Viewers who aren't diminished into a mere shadow of themselves, but somehow made grander, emotionally enlarged. In Cinema Paradiso, the young boy returns years later to the village he grew up in, only to find that it has been undone by television. Where film had magically shrunk the distance between the villagers and the outside world, TV has only increased their isolation from each other.
Da quanto tempo avete chiuso?
A maggio fanno 6 anni. Non veniva più nessuno. E lo sa meglio di me. La crisi, la televisione, le cassette. Oramai il cinematografo è solo un sogno.
The hostility couldn't last forever, though. For one thing, the movies didn't die. And for another, a whole generation of filmmakers grew up with television. Not only were they not frightened by it, they were actually drawn to the possibilities it offered. A television screen wasn't just useful for showing how terrible TV was. It could be used to show other things too, and with a matter-of-factness that was to prove irresistible. Gary Ross rightly called it a piece of furniture. But has a piece of furniture ever been so expressive, so adaptable, so aesthetically seductive?
When you get up close to the TV image, it breaks apart into its lines and its components. It's almost like pulling the curtain back on the magic a little bit. And, you know, you sort of see it starkly for what it is.
When you see television on film, yeah, there's something that you're now in your home. It's a more domestic situation. It's something we're familiar with. So when you see it in a movie, I don't know, it's the familiarity that becomes useful.
I've always loved shooting screens. It certainly draws your attention. You know, audiences can't help it. It's like you hold a bone up in front of a dog, and man, he's going to start coming. We just, look at that screen. I got to see it.
A screen shown on a screen is like silver foil on a filling. It generates its own peculiar kind of electricity. It offers the possibility of a spectacular friction between what we're watching and what the characters on screen are looking at.
You can create moments where unexpected and quite shocking juxtapositions occur within the playing of a scene.
In Atta McGowan's film, Felicia's Journey, Bob Hoskins is shocked into a series of memories when he sees Rita Hayworth in Salome on hospital television.
I'd give half my kingdom.
No. Give me the head of the Baptist.
There is a whole series of memories that he has at that point of going to the opera as a young boy with his mother to see a production of Salome, which are all triggered by having Rita Hayworth respond to John the Baptist's head presented in that frame. There's a casualness with which something quite dramatic and striking just suddenly interrupts this person's life.
That scene reminds us that all our imaginations, not just the pathological ones, are coloured by old movies. Films have made us what we are, and if that's true for you and me, it's even more so for film directors. TV had shown many young filmmakers the films that influenced them, so it was hardly surprising that they would turn to television when they wanted to show them to us, as John Carpenter did in Halloween when he wanted to pay his dues to Howard Hawks.
We used Hawks' thing on TV. We used the opening credits just because of that little burn-in, and the music was Dmitri Tiomkin at his best, just roaring away. And then the flying saucer moment when everybody stretches out on the ice. It's my favorite parts.
In Halloween, to watch TV is to be unaware of the reality outside, your attention distracted in a way that might easily prove fatal.
Where are you?
The young boy has to turn away from the TV screen to look out of the window and see the real threat. But television can provide a kind of window too, one that lets us see past the fiction and the dream to the real world beyond it.
I like the fact that you can create a world within just a room, if you wanted to, by showing the outside. In Fear and Loathing, we have the television on in the hotels in Las Vegas the whole time. The television in that instance is the only thing showing the outside world, that's showing reality, because that was a film about being in Vegas where everything is unreal, everything is artificial, everything is well, the twisted American dream.
You took too much, man. You took too much, too much. Don't try and fight it. You get brain bubbles, strokes.
But the reality of the American dream at that moment was the Vietnam War. And it's on television. It's constantly showing you what's going on and counterpointing what's happening in these hotel suites.
The lives of hopes for peace and freedom of millions of people to be suffocated. So tonight...
In the end, it was news coverage that finally gave the technical inferiority of the television image a kind of respectability. Hollywood had first competed against television with pictures as glossy and polished as they could make them. But ironically, a new generation of directors realised that they would have to travel in exactly the opposite direction to restore cinema's power and freshness. They would have to move towards cheaper formats and less professional technique.
There's been a dissatisfaction with the gloss of the film image from as early as, that whole revolution in the 1960s and the 70s, where filmmakers were rejecting the cumbersome nature of a studio approach. The huge blimped cameras and the star quality lighting. All of that stuff was sort of thrown away when a whole new generation of equipment became available that was handheld and which could be easily mobile, and a whole new type of film stock became available.
With the opening of Mean Streets, Scorsese broke all the rules of classic Hollywood style. The image was small and grainy, the actors looked at the camera, and the frame tilted and shook. This was a new cinematic language, but it was one that seemed to tell the truth. Scorsese and others had learned it not from television, but from the cinema verite documentary filmmakers who were breaking new ground in the 70s with lightweight equipment. They showed that a shaky camera could also shake the audience emotionally. Material that would once have been deemed unusable or poor quality proved that every vice can have its virtues. In Felicia's journey, Bob Hoskins secretly records the young girls he picks up in his car, a form of observation that emphasises their vulnerability and innocence.
You are a nice man now. I mean, you haven't told me anything about you and how you think and how you feel.
There was a sequence where I showed him setting up the camera in the car and showing this, tiny little wire cam, and then when editing it, I realized you don't have to explain it. I mean, people can just assume. And we're living in a time where, especially in this culture, there are so many security cameras going at any given point, and that every movement is recorded to an extent, so you don't have to explain it anymore.
There's a whole vernacular of people photographing their babies or their summer vacations or their new house or their friends that has become a part of our common language, and that video is a shared part of our common language. We've all taken these pictures. You don't have to be a professional, and that looks just like the kind of picture that I take. And when that happens, suddenly it puts them right in the movie.
More importantly for Hollywood, it can put them right into the movie queues too.
I can see you.
Last year's surprise hit, The Blair Witch Project, proved that the immediacy of video, its carefully constructed accent of sincerity, could be more effective than millions of dollars spent on special effects. The Blair Witch Project frightened its audience, but it scared a lot of people in Hollywood too, by showing that anyone who can lift a video camera could be a director.
The idea is that they really took cameras out there, that they're not a polished Hollywood product. It's not the establishing shot, the close-ups, the over-the-shoulders. It's not the moving camera of a director who's showing you his vision. It's I have a camera and I'm now walking around the woods. It's trying to be, again, it's like television, trying to be right there.
Stop with it, kid. It's kind of like a mass that keeps getting bigger and bigger.
Television began by terrifying Hollywood, and 40 years on, Hollywood is terrifying new audiences with tricks learnt from television. Can we really tell any more who has won the battle? Or have we reached that eerie moment in the science fiction movie where it becomes quite impossible to say who's a friend and who is an enemy? Hollywood recovered from its first panic by recognizing that what it feared so much might actually enrich it. And in doing so, it remembered cinema's true strengths, not sheer size or sheen or gimmicks of projection, but its ability to seize almost any object in the world and turn it to its own artistic ends. It thought television was a rival faith that would lure its congregation away, but perhaps there was only one true faith all along.
In 1,000 years, if an anthropologist was to study this, they would absolutely conclude that these were our religions. We went to these large temples to worship large icons on a big screen, and everybody had this private little sanctuary at home, which was this smaller box where they worshiped smaller icons at home. But do you think any anthropologist, any archaeologist who dug these things up would think that they were for entertainment rather than worship? No, I really doubt it.
If you want to have fun, come home with me. You can stay all night and play with my TV. TV is the thing this year. TV is the thing this year.
Via Dolorosa tomorrow night on BBC2, playwright David Hare's acclaimed monologue on the Middle East is out to infuriate and intrigue. It's earlier than advertised at 10:05. Coming next, Jules Holland.